Video games can be a visceral experience, and sometimes you just want to get your blood pumping. Whether you're into decapitating Nazis, mutilating zombies, or decapitating and or mutilating Nazi zombies, there's enough adrenaline to go around. But there's one thing that's even cooler than shooting Hitler in the balls, more intense and exciting than slicing a mech in half with a samurai sword. I, of course, am talking about reading. I've been really appreciating games that focus on story and writing these days. If you're not privy to what I'm talking about here, these games don't have as much focus on gameplay as your average title. They're almost exclusively about story and atmosphere. And I don't know about you, but after a long day at the work factory, sometimes I need to unwind. And there's nothing more relaxing than busting open a cold one and reading a good old story, if you know what I mean. Video games being such a broad and flexible medium can add a whole new dimension to storytelling that is absent from books, TV, or music. And no, not just the ability to control a character or punch a man in the gonads if you want. It's the ability to create your own story, something that goes beyond choose your own adventure books, although those were fantastic as a child. I am not knocking Goosebumps in any way, I promise. Games where in almost every interaction, you embody your character and make their every move for them. You create your own destiny, and I think that's extremely interesting. And since there's no emphasis on things like moment-to-moment gameplay, the developers of these games can really flex their creative writing muscles and go all in on telling a broad and engaging narrative tailored to the player. Do you want to be a depressed, alcoholic cop stuck in a foreign country with amnesia? Well, too bad you have no choice. Disco Elysium is an interactive novel developed and published by ZA/UM. Zaum. You play as a pathetic, alcoholic, perverted, violent, and or superstar detective who has been sent to the occupied Republic of Revachol to investigate a hanging. The thing is, for the first 3 days you've been there, you haven't gotten much investigating done. You've been getting your drink on, hard. And on the 4th day, you wake up in your hotel room with no memory of who you are and what you're doing there. You have to figure out what the hell you did in this place during your 3-day bender and solve the mystery of the hanged man. I'll let Kim Kitsuragi explain some more.
Do you want me to brief you? 3 days ago, the RCM Emergencies Desk received a report about a security guard who was found hanged in Martinez. An anonymous caller said there was a dead body behind the Whirling in Rags hostel cafeteria. The cadaver had been there for 4 days. No one had come to investigate. During that time, the victim had been stripped of his belongings. The caller did not identify him, but used the word lynching. There is an ongoing labor dispute between the local dock workers and the logistics company Wild Pines. I was told we should approach the death as part of this dispute.
Isn't he just the best? This is one of my favorite games ever. It has an abundance of character, and all of the writing is done extremely well. And that's a good thing, because in this game the majority of what you will be doing is talking to people, interrogating suspects, familiarizing yourself with the locals, writing down leads and personal side quests in your journal. It can be incredibly engaging. The characters that you come across in Martinez are all very distinct, each with their own personality and some with their own little storylines. Kim is a favorite, and he'll be by your side for most of the investigation, but there are a number of other very colorful characters to find in this town. The dialogue you have with these characters is now made even more engaging by a recent update that added full voice acting. Very good voice acting. The main character you play as is a fucking dumpster fire, but you get to change his trajectory. You can try to douse the flaming pile of shit that is his life or pour gasoline on it. You have full access to his thoughts and his reactions, and you can say and do some really wild shit.
The words have already left your mouth.
What was that? That's not even how words are used.
Disco Elysium is a CRPG, like the rest of the games that I'll be talking about in this video. It utilizes mechanics normally found in a tabletop D&D game. The main character, whose name I will not spoil, has a number of different abilities and skills, all separated into 5 categories: intellect, psyche, physique, and motorics. Each of these categories are made up of 5 attributes. These attributes can be improved with skill points. Throughout the game, you will be faced with situations in which these attributes will be tested, and there's a dice roll mechanic where you have a chance to succeed depending on how many points you have in the tested attribute. It's a very well done system, and the genius doesn't end there. In any normal conversation or scenario, these attributes will talk to you. Literal voices in your head telling you to do and or say things. These aren't just skills, they're primal urges attempting to bend the main character's will, attempting to bend your will. Sometimes they're helpful. For example, if you're good at the skill logic, it can help you pick up on things in conversation your character would normally miss. But other times they can actually lie to you, or tell you to do something ill-advised. Near the beginning of the game, my physical instrument skill told me that I should start smoking cigarettes as soon as possible, and I listened, of course, because I'm a superstar. You become familiar with the attributes that have your back, and the ones that are only going to hurt you or embarrass you. I think that's awesome. Something that I've been itching to talk about is just how good this game's aesthetics are. The music is amazing. I listen to the soundtrack to this day, and I'm always just so impressed by how perfect it is. British Sea Power really outdid themselves here. That coupled with the art style on display, it's just so unique and fun to look at. All of the character portraits do such a good job of showing off their personality, and I find myself falling in love with the art on display here over and over again in each playthrough. Disco Elysium has seen major success since its release, so it's not necessarily a deep cut or anything, at least not anymore. This makes me very happy. The video games industry is still relatively young, but despite that, we already have damaging industry staples such as yearly titles with microtransactions, games released incomplete at launch, and uninspired new IPs. It's refreshing to see a game with so much artistic focus and good writing get its time in the spotlight. In a way, it shows that these games can make money. More of them can be made, and this type of storytelling can really flourish. I think video games can tell the best stories of any medium. Broader, deeper stories in which the viewer can partake in and affect. Disco Elysium is a great example of this. It's a game in which you're always seeking out information about yourself, about the case, about the history of Revachol, but because of how interactive it is, you can go down any path that interests you. Martinez is a town full of secrets just waiting to be discovered, and because of the structure of Disco Elysium's story, you can discover these secrets in any way you want, in any order that you want. This is your case. You're the one that needs to solve it. This goes beyond the story of games that are more gameplay intensive. In Disco Elysium, the story is the game. And because of that, it can be more descriptive, broad, and fascinating than other titles that make up the same space. Apparently, there's a TV show in the works for Disco Elysium. It does not look good. The original creators have basically lost the rights to their own IP. It's upsetting to see a passion project like this get hollowed out, but in some cases like these, it's inevitable. If you, for some reason, haven't played Disco Elysium, it's great. You should try it. Citizen Sleeper is a CRPG in which you play as a synthetic human in a dystopian sci-fi world. You've escaped from the corporation that created you and are on the run. You flee to a space station that is considered a neutral rogue state, the Eye, home to other criminals and ne'er-do-wells like yourself. Thing is, your only crime is existing. It is now up to you to figure out how to stay free and keep yourself alive. You're not only in danger of being captured, you're also at risk of completely shutting down. The thing about you is that SNARP, the company that gave you your body, made it so that it's reliant on stabilizers that must be taken regularly for you to stay alive. Your body is dying, and you need to find ways to keep it running while you're hiding and building a life for yourself. Citizen Sleeper's main mechanics are focused around time and resource management. Every day you wake up with up to 5 dice to roll for activities and events. You can work shipyards, buy food, play the crypto stock market, and many more things. These dice will determine whether or not your attempts at these many different tasks will succeed with a bonus or fail with penalties. You need to decide your priorities for each day so you can survive the next. But most importantly, you will meet people while you're spending your time in the Eye. You'll make friends, you will be hunted, you will aid in businesses, you will work for pay, and many, many other things. The cast of characters you run into here are varied and coupled with some very impressive stylized illustrations. You will be given drives, which are basically side quests that you can put time and effort into, things that may take in-game days or weeks to complete. This is where time management comes in. A lot of these drives have deadlines that you can fail. In fact, it's most likely the case that you're going to fail at least one of them, if not more, in a given playthrough. Here's a small early game example. Dragos is one of the first people you meet on the Eye. He's a cute little man with an even cuter little robot buddy. This gracious little dude will grant you a place to stay right in the beginning of the game. It may be a shitty small storage container, but that's okay. You need something and he's giving you that something. A few days into the playthrough, after you help Dragos at the shipyard for a bit, he'll get his hands on an interesting scrapped ship that he calls the White Light. He asks you to help him repair this ship because he's in debt and needs the extra labor. He basically tells you he doesn't know if he can risk you staying here any longer. It's dangerous to harbor sleepers like yourself, but if you help him out, it may change his mind. On my first playthrough of this game, I threw caution to the wind, and this drive slipped through the cracks. Dragos then kicked me out and told me I needed to find somewhere else to stay. Suffice to say, it made things a bit more difficult. Now this may sound stressful, right? Well, despite the fact that you're always strategizing and thinking while you're playing this game, the entire time you will be assaulted by such a strangely relaxing soundtrack. This game sounds good, like super good. I'll have this shit cranked up to the max the entire time I'm playing. I don't know how you make sounds like this, but I love listening to it. It's like a depressing sci-fi ambient vibe, which is my kind of music. It's also perfect reading music, which you'll be doing a lot of. There's no voice acting here either, which I think is a great choice. It makes you feel like you're alone with your thoughts trying to solve this elaborate survival puzzle, and such good reading it is. I think this game is very well written, whether it be dialogue or the overarching story, and I'll be damned if I spoil it any further. Citizen Sleeper came out last year to much critical acclaim. Despite its niche concept, it did pretty well for itself. Dense, narratively driven games like this have so much space to create and explore exciting new ideas. I think the concept of Citizen Sleeper, the way you interact with the world, and the way its mechanics work are unique. All of these ideas aren't necessarily original, but the way everything works together is. It's a game where the story is at the very forefront. If you're not paying attention, there will be penalties. Those penalties come in the form of, well, losing, dying due to a lack of stabilizers. But another penalty is simply missing out on more story. This is a digital world with real consequences to your actions, real decisions you need to make in order to survive. Decisions that have weight. There are whole storylines that you can ignore, people that you can abandon for the sake of your own survival, and people that will abandon you if you disappoint them. Citizen Sleeper was an experience that had my full attention at all times, thinking of which activities to focus on and which will benefit me more in the long run. This game's biggest asset is its immersion, and it achieves this immersion with a 3D model space station, a handful of character illustrations, and some text. This is because the story is the game. The creators have so much time to focus on crafting this perfect world, and they succeed with flying colors. In fact, it manages to feel more vibrant and alive than some of the other space stations I've explored recently. Pentiment is a somewhat simple, side-scrolling adventure game in which you play as Andreas Mahler, a wandering artist. You've come to the rustic town of Tassing to further your artistic career and create a series of manuscripts to show the town's history. Things certainly do not go as planned. Andreas finds himself stuck in the middle of a mysterious murder plot, but I will not say much further. There is much more to this story than I am letting on, simply because I think playing through this game blind is the best way to play it. I can at least say it's a very broad and engaging story, with twists that I don't think anybody could expect. While playing as Andreas, you get to pick his backgrounds and interests, decisions that show their usefulness with time throughout a playthrough. The first time I played this game, I made Mahler a hedonist with a penchant for Latin, not expecting these decisions to change much for me in the story. But I was incorrect. This decision makes this game quite replayable. You spend a lot of time talking to the citizens of Tassing, peasants, priests, nuns, old witch ladies in the woods, and more. Depending on your dialogue with these characters, you may say something that makes them think less of you. It utilizes one of those classic Telltale game mechanics where it says, this character will remember that after you say something downright stupid. This mechanic is quite important, and the way you build your character can affect your notoriety in Tassing quite a bit when you ask for favors. And what a town Tassing is, not to say it's nice to live there, it's a heap of shit. But throughout the game, you learn the town's rich history, and for any history buffs out there, I'd consider it extremely interesting. 15th century European Christian history is what I would consider a somewhat niche topic, that Obsidian has made to be so captivating here. Andreas is given advice in his dreams by the likes of Prester John, Saint Grobian, and Socrates. Like little demons and angels on his shoulders, you can ask them for advice during conversations with nobles and townsfolk. Throughout the game, you hear about historical events surrounding Christian revolutionaries like Martin Luther and are afforded the opportunity to debate about them with your peers. You get to decide what the town's historical mural will look like. It's all in the player's hands, and that's only a few of the reasons why I think this game is incredible. Because again, I do not want to spoil the story here. Now, one of the most striking things about Pentiment, more so than I think any of the other games in this video, is the art style. So much time and effort was put into making this game look like it came pouring out of a Renaissance book. Pentiment has a very focused art direction, and it just flows with creativity. Every story beat, every scripted event, and every character that makes them up looks beautiful. I find myself surprised by it every time I venture back to Tassing, and who would I be if I didn't mention the music here? It's about as majestic and inspired as you'd expect from a game with such artistic focus. Pentiment is another game that came out last year. It may not have been as successful as Citizen Sleeper, but it was still very well received. In comparison to the other games in this video, Pentiment can be somewhat linear. It certainly isn't completely linear, but I'm not going to spoil what I mean by that. It's a large story, one that spans over many years, and it gives you the space to explore it, with a ticking timer. Much like Citizen Sleeper, there are mechanics at play here that involve time management, but instead of attempting to survive on a space station, in Pentiment you're trying to stop a killer. You're given leads to follow, and the character that you play as isn't the judge of the suspects. You the player are. Pentiment strings you along, giving you little clues, small bizarre findings, and then poses you with the big question, a very important question. Who is the murderer? This is completely up to the player to investigate and decide. The weight rests entirely on their shoulders, and these decisions change the destiny of every character in Tassing. The very future of the town rests in the hands of the player. Pentiment has amazing world building, the village of Tassing is alive, and every action the player makes is met with an equal and opposite reaction. Obsidian is able to do this because, once again, the story is the game. They're able to pool all of their resources into the village of Tassing and its people, making it feel like a real place, giving your decisions weight. These games are all very special to me, and this version of storytelling has proven to be a favorite of mine in recent years. I think video games have the capacity to tell some of the most impressive stories of this generation, and that potential is being realized, and it's being pushed further and further. I've been mentioning how successful these titles have been in recent years, because I just think it's a good thing for the medium as a whole. Video games as an art form have so much potential for good storytelling, and despite this, we are given some really bland, mass-marketed material with little to no substance. But if you look underneath the surface, just a bit, you'll find games like these, passion projects that have been realized to their potential, and they're swimming to the surface, slowly but surely. All three of these titles are narrative-driven games that I would consider to be my favorite, but there's a whole genre of titles out there, some niche indie games and others smash hits. I think that these types of games are truly special, and I want to see more of them. If you haven't played any of these titles, I cannot recommend them enough, and there's certainly more where that came from. Thank you for watching. Bird out.